Did both teams already warm up? Batting practice is over. It was just been noted here at the studio that batting practice is over, but first the news. One man's first wife was named I Care a Lot. His next wife's name was I Don't Care as Much as I Used to. His third wife's name was Now I Don't Hardly Care at All. And his fourth wife murdered him at his request. Is it already too soon for me to remind everyone that no matter what this sounds like, no matter what it appears that I'm talking about the human mind? I'm not talking about this. The members of the orchestra took a vote, then collectively said to the conductor, just jump in wherever you like. After he died, one man thought, what worse can happen to me? An old story retold for probably the 4,000th time. A man tells us that he could have been a famous, successful author, but that he spent his whole life going to writers' workshops and conferences. Why don't we get this over with and put everybody out of their misery? Here's the prototypical reality his words reflect. Everybody could see if it weren't for them looking. A lad said to his dad, after much study of the matter, I've about come to the conclusion that there is no such thing as the mind. Only ceaseless thoughts which create an impression we accept of there being something solid there which we call the mind. And he looked at his father questioningly for a response to his comment. And the elder looked at him back and said, freight cars aren't a train, but there is no train without cars. And with this, they both nodded. Then went their separate ways to now ponder the nature, if reality of, tracks. A parrot and a lion once had an act. Sometimes the parrot would be in charge and the lion playing second banana, while at other times their positions were reversed. But who in their audience could tell? Some educational news. History is writ by idiots and read by imbeciles, and the viewer writes. Would you read stories, those little stories, just a bit faster? Sometimes I can almost understand one. In a certain solar system was once two sister planets. And on one, the inhabitants were born wanting to figure things out, while on the other, there was nothing to figure out. It's a good thing the two never got together, huh? And the viewer writes, I am writing on behalf of many more people than just myself to say to you, are you continually playing with our minds, putting us on, making fun of us? And lazing in the grass, one lion cracked open an eye and said to a bud laying nearby, what is it that humans see about themselves that cause them to laugh at one another? A man read about a faraway land. He decided he wanted to go there. He didn't actually know whether the place really existed or not. So what? He still believed that he wanted to go there. And a viewer immediately writes, what's the point? What's the point? Pigs are dumb and make stupid, annoying noises. Those who let such sounds bother them must be twice as dumb, at least. There was once a planet on which the creatures were born with a partial delusion that they were 6 inches taller than they actually were. I say it was a partial delusion in that if, in real time, their true height was pointed out to them, they were momentarily aware of it. But then the very next instant, as soon as the subject left their mind, they were collectively back to living with the partial delusion that they were 6 inches taller than they actually were. Query, When, from a view of possibility unknown to them, a whole species is dumb, how can any individually be so properly identified? The answer, of course, is that they can't, and that only the double dense so involve themselves. Oh yeah, and this equally applies to an individual and his judgment of the intelligence of his own thinking. All in all, try and root it out and see it for yourself. Thoughts are pigs. One man changed his return address to, "You call this consciousness? Plus, smile when you say that in my house, partner." A man confided to an expert, "I have a rash on my head." And the professional one responded, "Well, if you must have one, it's good that it's on your head where hair will keep it from showing." "No, no," said the man, "you don't understand." Life motioned to a man to come over here and join it, then said to him, "You can either throw up yourself or help me clean up everybody else's." One author divided his literary life into two periods. The first, in which his writings made sense, and then the one that followed, in which he attempted to abandon his earlier approach. Stand in any train station you choose, and you'll always see that some announced destinations are more popular than others. And a young lad holding to his father's hand asked, "Why is that so, Papa?" And the father replied, "Based on the taste of the locals, in some areas candy bars with nuts cost extra, while in others more is charged for those in which nuts have not been put." And the boy wiped his mouth and looked up at the elder and added, "So, in some kingdoms, as reward for rebellion against the crown, you're shot, while in others, for the same act, you're not." "You have it," responded the taller of the two, "which is why, as soon as I was sure that you could balance yourself and stand alone upright, that I have led you incessantly into lands of uncertainty and instability." What greater gift be possible on Parents' Day than for a man to finally and totally consume himself? Definition. Civilization. Men struggle to give their mind something to do. From the doctor's notepad, when you are thought sick, additional talk is additional illness. On a bathroom wall proclaimed this scrawl, "An idiot can't be insulted, but can insult." And from a neighboring stall, a voice cried out, "So what's the point? What's the point?" One man took it upon himself as a task to write a fully expositional play, revealing all aspects of the relationship between a man's brain and its thoughts. It turned out to be a one-act play, quite brief, consisting of a blind actor coming on stage and stabbing himself in the eyes. One man changed the name of on his turtle's birth certificate to, "The telling of the truth is not the truth, nor the revealing of the secret, the secret." See, it's all just a little joke, a harmless time killer, a bit of amusement, end quote. Much crime is not for profit, but is an antidote to boredom. When seated on the throne of pure consciousness, and thus with a clean view of his kingdom, a clear view of his kingdom, one man began to see thoughts as crimes against the crown. From the secret showbiz manual of how to conduct yourself in public comes this useful tidbit. Whatever your act is, always have a slow, gradual introduction. Only fools and those who know what they're doing jump right in. The body has no complaints. only needs. Only thoughts have complaints. Thus, no thoughts, no complaints. Simple, huh? That'll be $40 for an office visit, and you can pay my assistant up front, or out back, or over there, or perhaps more this way. Looking himself over real good, one man felt forced to note, well, one thing you got to say about the body is that it's everywhere that you want to be. Or can be, for that matter. And silently his thoughts just muttered. Regarding, even when you're alone and talking to yourself, you're still with somebody. That's the headline. If you weren't in two, you'd never talk about what you'd do. As a medical experiment, one man had several thousand brains implanted all over his body. In line with his certain efforts, one man became aware that he had brains extant all over his body. As a reward for a life well spent, one man ate his own brains and was done with it, burp. One hippo finally realized, the problem's not the water I'm in, but the water that's in me. The mind has no choice but to initially swallow the environment. But what is later open to a man is to realize what has happened, and thus establish a new personal sense of balance between in here and out there. One man used to be a corporation. Now he's a partnership. He says he looks forward to becoming a sole proprietor. I guess that was a little legal business news if I didn't know better. A man on a train asked the engineer, "Where are we going?" And the engineer replied, "You shouldn't have got on if you have to ask." And as the man leaped from the cab, he cried out, "So what's the point? What's the point?" Since nothing overly exciting or even of any consequence ever occurred in his bathtub, one man moved there permanently. In one guy's personal dictionary, under a section entitled Man, from one end to the other, we find this entry: thoughts, unnecessary circumcision of consciousness. In a certain land, the king abdicated his throne, leaving in his place a mirror. No one but him noticed any difference. There is an unknown species of bird which have teeny-weeny little human brains and are the only flyers with a sense of time and urgency. One man's current official conclusion, subject, he notes, to revision, is, if words really amounted to anything, people wouldn't talk so much. I don't know about you, but for the sake of me, I don't see any room for meaningful revision. There was once a hallway between two locked rooms, which was referred to by the few who knew of his existence as, when you care enough to send yourself. And as he hurled his lack of sympathy at us, the man shouted, "What's the point, I say? What's the bloody point?" And the first man, noted above, says that so far his official conclusion still remains, if words really amounted to anything, people wouldn't talk so much. In one man's personal files labeled The Anatomy of Human Awareness, we find this definitive entry: thoughts, the Helen Keller of consciousness. One man had a job in a sawmill, and while everyone else kept getting their hands too close to their work and losing fingers, he kept putting his head down close to what was going on. Headline: How to lose weight in the land of plenty. In fact, then, the land of too much plenty, when you know that you've had more than enough. Where others eat, don't. Starve an ill, feed an idiot, if you wish to remain in the land of Nod. One man renamed all of his fears Excitement Incorporated, and immediately went on vacation. Permanently. One man says that still another advantage to having plastic flowers in your yard is that you can piss on them with impunity. Guess pretty much the same as with your mind and ordinary thoughts, huh? One man changed his pen name to, I don't have the least idea what I'm talking about, but boy, doesn't it sound impressive? Which so fascinated even him that he went out and bought his next book. A boy asked his father, does impatience come from the body or the mind? But the elder refused to answer, he said, until the lad calmed down. A man asked his backyard, well, if everything is all right, then why do men live in the land of not all right? And the answer it gave him went right by him, over his head, so to speak. And finally, a boy said to his father, tell me again how, when we talk, that you are only responsible for what you say, and that I am responsible for what I hear. And the elder began whistling and calling out, here, Rover, here boy, here boy. According to the latest polling results, which as a matter of fact came in here to the studio in the last hour, the most asked question today submitted to the Prime Minister's office was, why is chess less popular than basketball? And just moments ago, an official spokesman for United Airlines released this response. It said that the lead actor in the upcoming movie version of The Odyssey stated that the reason that the book is a classic is because it's timeless. Trying again to take up, as is my part-time job, on behalf of life. Well, not so much take up on it, it's more of a PR job of, well, it's not a PR job in the sense of that you would think of as perhaps a commercial, a profit-making endeavor, more of a, shall we say, public service. After all, if life is not in the business of public service, who is? And so to help distribute and disseminate, if not dissect, useful, impartial information having to do with many of the various aspects in which life, and ways in which life serves man at no additional cost, and for which is given little credit, I would like to point out to you, as always, something that I do not have to make it up. I keep trying to make up something because if I did, I could ask for an increase in salary from life. I could say, well, I'm also now a writer. Now, I don't just stand up there and play the part of that guy. I'm not just some sort of mouthpiece. I'm actually contributing, but no. Before I can get around to making up something obscenely funny or sarcastic or unbelievable, life simply nudges me, and I look over there, and it's happening. Here's one that's been happening for thousands of years. Someone is constantly singling out some group of people. And the the division is of no consequence, but it will be some based upon the division of some sort. And they'll identify a group of people, and then they will point out the many, 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 many hardships that they have suffered. But the punchline, the climax is they survived. And can you believe what the Prime Minister's office had? No, they had to let United Airlines respond to why basketball is more popular than chess. You missed it. Well, how about an individual level? How about an interview 4,000 years ago, 4 hours ago? Someone who has suffered a great tragedy. That is, they're alive. Well, but to be interviewed, though, you must be able to that something in your life has been singled out by you, which not, everybody will volunteer to single it out. But it's even better yet if a potential interviewer will single you out and go, my God, this terrible thing happened to you. And any good person, even before they know what they refer to, will go, oh yeah. So whatever it was, their house burnt down, they lost everything. Who knows what? You know how it goes. As I said, if you're alive, you know how it goes. You just hadn't been interviewed yet. But they ask the person, they say, how in the world? It's unbelievable. You are an inspiration to us all. It's just unbelievable. Here you sit. It touches me, and I'm sure I speak for all of us here in Lithuania, that it is just an absolute inspiration that you can carry on after what has happened to you. I don't know why life keeps encouraging me to speak about matters of another state of consciousness, another change of mind that may or may not be down the road for everybody, when there you stand looking at this. Hearing it in and out your ears, you hear yourself say it. Oh, how can I go on? Oh, well, that's what you do if nobody will interview you. Just to yourself, you go, oh. At least this be one of the tapings that ever makes it actually onto public airways, at least there are any civilians, normal people listening. This has nothing to do with anything that you imagine it does. It has nothing to do with sympathy. It has nothing to do with hard times, unless you are of perhaps you might be related to that species of bird that had those little teeny weeny human brains. The hardships, this is not even, remember I'm not talking about hardships, but I'm going to start somewhere that seems to make physical sense perhaps. To talk about hardships in the same breath or in the same lifetime to a person believing that they're trying to understand the nature of life is a form of self-mutilation. You don't need to go see that man's play where the blind actor, in a brief moment of one-act play, stabs himself in the eyes. No need for you to go see that. You can save the money. You are the man. It is absolute folly. It's not only self-destructive, it's suicidal if you're attempting to consider anything about life. If you're still suffering under the impression that anything must be borne up under, or anything must be borne up, that there is any conditions under which it is surprising that you have survived. There is no such awareness of the body. There is no such awareness of the totality of man. It is another manifestation of the mind, assuming you still believe it exists. I know you have thoughts, and it'll be the thoughts of anyone that would react in any sort of questioning or negative way to what they think I'd said thus far. But there is no such thing. There's no hardships. If you're ordinary, they are. And it doesn't have to be that you lost your home or that your family all died in a car accident. That's why you laughed, whether you realize it or not. And when I said that someone had a hardship, and I threw in parenthetically, well, they're alive. Whether you looked at it that way, that's the laugh. Because life is neither good or bad, but if you're alive to believe that you have borne up under some hardship, I don't know. Those little birds probably make you look like a moron. The body has no awareness. You're either alive or dead. The rest of it is manifestations of civilization. It's man's attempt to give their mind something to do. What's new? Oh, my wife died and all my children. You don't say. Yeah, what's new with you? My wife, my children, and my dog died. All right, my wife, children, dog, and cat died, and plus a whole box of brand new CDs I had purchased. I left in the truck, and they melted. And there you go. How can anyone say that they have any intention, that they have any interest in understanding what's going on in life? When let us just say, for instance, let's just speculate and say that we're talking about somebody, 20 years old, 20 plus. They've been around the planet. It's easier, as always, for me not to speak of people specifically involved with attempting some change in their consciousness, because that seems so vague, which it is, but it seems so open to unlimited speculation. That's easier normally to refer to religion, because that's kind of the public, simplistic form. But of people believing, it's still the same thing, that they're believing that they are trying to undergo a transformation. And I'll refer to religion and something above the most fundamental sense of people that's still involved with nature worship and believing that religion is simply nothing but attempts to modify behavior to make people more civilized, even though that's not what they call it. But if they are actually attempting, if they still proclaim, which is the mind talking, it's nothing other than that, of them saying that they are attempting, or they long for a transformation of the soul, of the spirit, that they would like to be a different person. Of course, what they'd really like is for everybody else to be different. So that's the difference between being religious and actually doing this. That's about the only difference, from one view, is religious people say that they're praying that they'd be different, and they're not. The mind won't do that. The mind prays everybody else be different. It's only people it's only people who would do such as this that realize everybody else has it backwards and it's not going to work. The belief that you can be different from an ordinary view, like the religious view, or just it could be people who believe that they're involved with psychological self-help, but I'm lumping them all together to make it easy. The belief that they can be different is based upon an unanalyzed acceptance of the fact that there are things wrong with life. Why else would anyone want to change? And they see that there's things, there are untoward aspects of life which cause people to suffer. Then people say that it's all I can do to survive this, which I repeat, it is simple enough to understand that that is not any cry, it is no information. Not even at the molecular level, which is where it all comes from, but there is nothing at the molecular level, if you're going to separate, which we can do, the brain temporarily from all other organs, which you can do it, but there's no cellular information coming from anywhere other than man's brain that tells him that there is anything amiss. There's nothing at that level that is equitable to a complaint. As I pointed out in the news item, I wasn't playing with words. Only the body has no complaints. I turned it into two different words to distinguish between complaints and needs. The body has needs. The body gets hungry, the body gets tired, the body gets cold, the body gets horny. But they're needs. They're not complaints. Now, it's easy enough for the mind or somebody to listen to that and go, well, I complain when I get hungry. I'm sure you do, sir. That still doesn't change the fact that it's a need. It's only the mind that complains. The mind can complain about being hungry. The mind can complain about being horny. How come nobody will date me? But that's not the body. There is no information other than the brain that ever reaches a man's tongue, that never reaches his awareness, that is in the form of a complaint, save the mind, the brain. So it's not a theory. It's just a matter of whether you can feel it and recognize the validity of it. And so the idea that survival is in any way a statement of admirable recognition. The person survived. Oh, how could you do it? All right. In case any of you just new to this, all this sarcasm and dramatics are simply dramatics. Because there's nothing sarcastic, there's nothing ironic, there's nothing to be made fun of in human nature. This is all for the matter of trying to intensify a certain background so as to unexpectedly bring out that which is in the forefront or can be seen in the forefront and people do not recognize it. That's the only reason for the theatrics. That the idea of, oh, how could you survive? To skip the theatrics is almost unconscionably dense. Just from any view of intelligence. Forget any extraordinary view from intelligence, because it's simply the matter, you either survive or you do not. And for one human to turn to another, or for one human to turn to history, or turn to reports, whether it be on an individual level or in references to large groups, whatever it is, and it refers to another human or humans and say, well, here is what we can say about them. Here, by God, will be their epitaph throughout history. They survived. And what was the question? Why is poo more popular than philosophy? Was that it? Was that what they had? Well, anybody that's made it this far, then you're confronted, we'll jump ahead, to a two-pronged problem. And one of them is you need glasses. It's a two-pronged problem. If you ever get that far, then you're faced with this. If you are trying to figure out life, if you indeed believe that you're not satisfied with the ordinary state of consciousness, notice that you have never done anything just beyond the level of, can somebody help me with my hook shot? You have never sought any further assistance other than to go to someone and go, I cut my finger. I know you think you might have gone to somebody and went, what is the true meaning of life? But what you did was say, somebody ran over my rose bushes. Or my mother died. Take your choice. And you're expecting, the mind is expecting, or humans claim they're expecting, that there will be some enlightening information possibly ensue from such inquiries, from the mind, from the human, from the person being so interested in what in the hell is going on. Why is life so intent on abusing us poor humans, and particularly me, of course. But what is going on here? As long as your level of awareness is at that stage, here again we're faced, almost my temptation to revert back to sham theatrical sarcasm and say we've got 6,000 years now of so-called recorded history of human intelligence on this planet. And people still ask that question. That what's going on here that life so mistreats man? Well, for those of you who may be watching or hearing this at some time, those live and in person, I could tell from some of the response, got their own sort of message from it. But think about the question. And it is a continuing question. It is it's not the cause, but it is at the heart, or at the heartbeat. It helps fuel and keep alive much of human civilization. Religion, philosophy, psychology, almost all of the non-physical sciences and arts is the feeling, and men express it oftentimes, authors, philosophers, social commentators, is that the whole purpose of life seems to be for us to figure out why the gods, why fate, why creation has so mistreated us. I'll do it again since... case there be any doubt, then you can do it yourself. But then you should, I'll go ahead and play the little game right quick, you should, to the people, which is somewhere now close to 6 billion. We're talking about way over 99% of the world's population at any given time have that feeling. If they're not thinking it at that moment, if you point it out to them, they all go, yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, probably hoping nowadays they'll be interviewed individually, but everybody goes, yeah, yeah. If you go, would you say that besides, worrying about the increase in consumer prices and et cetera, that the question that has always faced mankind, that continues to plague us and for which we so longingly desire an answer is why are men, humanity, so mistreated, so abused by life, so neglected, but so abused that 99% of the world's population, if they'll stand still a second, will go, oh yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. Even if they're in the midst of having a good time, they're in the midst of being at a restaurant with a fine food and some good wine, if you just stop them with a microphone or say, I'm doing a survey, and right in the midst of it, they'll stop and go, oh yeah, yeah, that's true, that's true. And they will individually, at that moment, they can identify with the question. They can even be saying there, again, there is no irony, that's not the point of me doing this, but they can be there with a nice big fork full of a prime steak, glass of expensive wine, and when you ask the question, they will even have flashes and think about starving children in other parts of the world and how unjust life is. Or, if that's a little spooky to their nervous system, they'll think about, well, it was only 2 years ago when my business crashed, I was eating down macaroni out of a box without even a hot plate, and now look. But suddenly you flash back like, yeah, tell me about how life mistreats you. It's just I'm on a temporary roll. A temporary role. Back again, trying to point out, I just hate to say all this outright. Maybe you've already gotten the whole point, but there is nothing to be learned by any human, by any mind, that will entertain the question, that is, why is humanity so mistreated? Or why am I so mistreated? Anyone, I don't care what degrees they have, I don't care what life experience, I don't care who they are, anyone who seriously entertains that question, even for a moment, has nothing resembling any objective ability to see. They will never see anything. They will never understand anything. If you will entertain the question of why are humans, why is human life cursed, there's nowhere to go. Let me try to specify again. When that road, you get that point that it splits into 3 parts. I thought you were going to have your eyes checked. If the body, and you can feel it, it's up to not necessarily everybody in the world wants to, but you can feel the validity of what I've said thus far. That is, the body does not entertain such questions. If you subtract the brain information that's coming to a man's awareness, normally referred to as his thinking, if you extract that momentarily, there is nothing left in a man that has any sense of doom, mistreatment, unfairness, justice, oppression, survival. There is the need to survive, but there is no talk about it. And if you do not survive, you don't mention it either, by the way. For those of you that may be having a slow IQ day, I thought I couldn't resist pointing that out. That's one of the benefits that many mystics years ago used to live, so I'm told, I don't know, would always look for property close to graveyards and cemeteries. They said that they enjoyed the company or something about it. It was either that or the conversation. But anyway, it's just an uncircumcised rumor, as some of you would say. Let's try it from another angle once it's split up into 2 parts. If that is not the body, which it's not, and you can feel it and there's nothing else I care to say about it, it's just a fact. Well, all right, one other thing. I can usually not resist doing this. look at any other creature on this planet, take your best, insightful, calm look at any other creature that you have any knowledge of firsthand or just what you picked up from watching National Geographic shows. Is there any sign of any other creature from the highest mammals that show any sign of, even in the throes of death, even while starving to death, do they show any sign whatsoever from your knowledge, or have you ever heard it reputed from any reputable source that they show any signs of, I'm being mistreated? That doesn't prove it, but I usually can't resist pointing that out. The real proof is in your own cellular passage of information. But if it is not the mind, then who is it, what is it, and what's afoot inside of a man's total organism now, that the highest claim he can make for himself, or if he is involved in a kind of hero worship, or at least a kind of recognition. By hero worship, I mean the widest sense of the word, that somebody is deserving of being interviewed, or is deserving of your notice, or it's deserving of your notice for someone to respond to inquiries, or that they are, in fact, reacting to a tragedy in their life. And we're not questioning a tragedy. You know, I'm not making fun of it, of deaths in the family and somebody losing loved ones or even their properties. I'm not making fun of it. But if then it's accepted, remember this, you've got 6,000 years of recorded history that you know of. It's an accepted statement of the strength, the front rank status of men, that by God I survived. At every ordinary level, if I hadn't pointed this out, it is taken to be a complimentary observation of much depth, of great significance and ramifications. But it can be something as minor. It doesn't have to be that they're interviewing someone whose entire family was just wiped out in a car wreck. They can be interviewing a sports figure and say, well, you're off to a good start, but when you slid in the other night and found out you tore your knee and you're going to be out for 6 months, my God. The guy says, well, the one thing about me, I survived. I am a survivor. This is not the first time. And the announcer, and you can hear it, and you can see people sing at home doing it, and they go, what a guy, what a guy. All the way from that, which might appear to be minor, that's in the major leagues, of course, but if it appears to be minor, all the way from that to more actual tragedies. If the response is, if the claim by the person and the response of humanity, that is other minds, that the best we can say, well, you know that they don't look at it. No one looks at it on the basis of the best you can say, so I shouldn't have thrown that in at that point. It's that they look at it as an unquestioned, an unanalyzed, well, an unquestioned statement, reflection of a superior person, if it's on an individual level, or the superior nature of some group of people, or, taken at a wider expanse, the superior position of humanity that we can bear up under terrible things such as this. If that is the best to be said about yourself, that's the best to be said about man, but if that's the best to be said about you, because any time that you are captive of a state of mind that is no more expansive than that you just automatically, with no analyzation, no notice of yourself, that you too nod along when somebody says, well, at least we survived it. And as people of a literary inclination might say, that it kind of makes their little heart pity-pat, like more parochial people might feel when the flag of their nation walks by. They feel like, well, my little heart had a little glow just to think about, yeah, but I survived. If that is the best that can be said, who is saying it and why, and what does it reflect? Well, as I thought I'd already covered, it is not the body saying it. And the body is what people want to survive. That is what you have in mind when anybody says, well, we survived. Notice, it's never a question. If they say, well, this group of people, they got cut off some little pocket of resistance in some warfare last month, 4,000 years ago, whenever it was, and they got trapped somewhere, and they were lost up in the mountains. No food, no nothing, and then years later they found that they were still there and started up anew. They go, well, my God, they survived. It is always, no one takes into consideration, but they're not questions like, wait a minute, what do you mean you survived? What kind of art did you produce during that period? You know, how did the stock prices, how did your stocks do during that period when, you know, the companies you people started? You didn't miss anything. All that's ridiculous is the point. It's because they only have in mind, figuratively speaking, the survival of the body. When they say, well, at least I survived it. My family, my business was wiped out, all of my family taken from me in a horrible car wreck, but by God, I survived. Nobody ever says, yeah, but boy, I bet it really fucked up your brain and everything. I bet internally you're a mess. They go, yeah, you. See? Nobody ever asks that, and it's not through courtesy. They say, never think about it. The guy says, I survived. And the unspoken statement is that I'm physically still alive, which is what I'm telling you. There's no statement to be made about that. I mean, there he is. He's answering the question. What else are you going to say if you have any ability to see life in any manner outside the standard paradigm? What's there to say? The man's alive. I can fall back into theatrical sarcasm and go, whoopee, let's throw a party. It is at the cusp where those three roads split. The man either survived or he didn't. And it didn't matter whether it was a car wreck. He got up this morning. And you may look around and there's all your family laying in bed. They're all there. Your house is not burnt down. You have as much right. It is as insightful to go, well, yeah, this may be a Monday morning and I may have to go to work. And I may be looking at the clock a little late, but I survived. You mean you're alive? Yeah. Well, here, let me pin a medal on your chest, or, you know, that sort of thing. It is beyond it's beyond even an identifiable level of ludicrousness. It's an insult to ludicrousness to apply it to this. To say that you're alive, much less to go, well, I'm alive. If you're alive, you're alive. If you need a medal for that, if you need recognition, even to yourself, then that's as much as you'll ever understand. It is not, and of course that is not what people tacitly believe that they are referring to. That is not the level at which this information gives at least the appearance. Well, it gives to ordinary minds some form of nourishment, some form of appeasement. It's to say, well, I survived it. Or to hear someone else that's undergone a tragedy go, well, I survived it. And they're reporting everybody, and you sitting at home watching it or hearing it and go, yeah. The unspecified part is that it furnishes some very crude collective form of intellectual, verbal nourishment or sustaining. You can't call it growth food. But since the human minds and most individuals are not growing, all it is nourishment of a sustenance quality. That as long as you're alive, it seems to be, no one analyzes it, but it seems to be, well, as long as my body is physically alive and other humans physically alive, maybe there's some intellectual hope, there's some other hope besides physical survival. That is, people may become more conscious, may become smarter. If not me, somebody else. As long as we're alive, there's a fighting chance. Of course, it's not based upon people's understanding of that. It's life making them do it. It is life driving humans in the mind to continually give themselves credit that they do not deserve. Not with my judgment, it is. Remember that planet where everyone was born with a partial delusion? They were 6 inches taller than they were. But it pointed out that It was called a partial delusion, or I called it that, because if in real time, if you walked up to one and went, by the way, your actual, you point out their exact height, what their actual height was, at that moment, they go, oh yeah. And as soon as you walked off, as soon as that, just an instant later, as soon as the subject left their mind, they're back to living with a partial delusion. So it's not me attacking humanity and saying, well, everybody's stupid and they think they're smart. They're what they think they are. Unless it's pointed out to them, and any rational human, any ordinarily wired human, you can point out that life's not like people say it is. And if you do it the right way, a human momentarily will go, yeah, you're right, but, lay off of me. Hey, I'm alive. Give me a break. Since things have reached such a crescendo, and we have now people speaking in tongues, and it's time to see who wants to give their heart to Jesus. I had someone write me from the audience from a news item several nights ago that talked about some people who got so surprised by something that happened, a group of humans that said that they did not know whether to shit in their pants or give their hearts to Jesus. Someone wrote me after that and said that they thought what I was going to say was that they didn't know what to do. They were so surprised, so they, since they couldn't make a decision, they shit in their pants and sent them to Jesus. Which, I'm getting slow. So I guess we should cut the tape early tonight. Fill in with take that stuff, that set I brought of that Lawrence Welk stuff, and just fill in the rest of the hour with a musical interlude. An interlude, huh? That's what. That was the